If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Hey, what's happening, everyone? Welcome to the final episode of Keeneland today on closing day for the Keeneland Fall Meet. You see that you get a new host today, myself, Pete Visco, and my co-host from Betting and Boozing, Charlie Freeman. Hey, Charlie, how's it going?
Pretty good. I'm glad we get to run it back. I felt like the last time was a great episode for the people, so I hope they're excited to see this crew again.
You know, I figured for the last day of Keeneland, they wanted to have the A-team on the show, and they wanted to close it off with a bang. So what better duo to wrap the meet up with, right?
No, yeah, very smart. Got to bring out the big guns if it's going to be the last episode.
This is what I'm saying. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. I think we came up with some good winners last time we were on as well. So I'm going to let Charlie hopefully do a little bit more talking today. I've been sick all week. My throat's a little scratchy, so I don't want to kill all the viewers with that. But we'll hopefully we can give you some winners. We're going to talk today about the early pick 5 at Keeneland, obviously, since it's Keeneland today. And in case you missed it, on Thursday, Charlie, you guys covered the late pick 5 at Keeneland, correct?
Yeah, so I now have gone through the entire program for the last day of Keeneland. Yes, I covered all 10 races.
Beautiful. So you figure just follow Charlie, and you're gonna go a good 10 for 10 most likely, and nice. Clean up. That would be fantastic. Before we get into that, though, let's do a little bit of the administrative stuff. As you can see on the bottom, please follow us on our YouTube channel, subscribe, definitely hit the like button, especially when me and Charlie are on, because we know those are the shows you really like the most. But subscribe, and actually hit that notification bell, especially on a week like this with Breeders' Cup coming up, because we have a bunch of ad hoc shows that aren't on our normal Wednesday, Thursday schedule. So you don't want to miss them. And if you hit the notification bell, YouTube will notify you every time one of our new shows is coming up. For our audio listeners, same thing. Please listen, subscribe, rate, review, wherever you listen to your audio podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Anchor, whichever method you use. On social media to follow the show, as most of you hopefully know, you can follow us on, we still say Twitter on here, on X at HKravitz, and on Instagram at Instagram.com/HHH Racing Podcast. Noah Maher has been sort of posting some stuff lately. We're trying to get our Instagram page up and running, so definitely give us a follow and check us out. Check out our website, hhhracingpodcast.com. Contains a bunch of stuff. Actually, I was going to do I'm going to bring that up really quickly, just because there's some stuff that's going to lead in that I wanted to show you guys following on the page. Actually, let me get this off the screen. If you look on here's our homepage, in case you haven't been there, hhhracingpodcast.com. What I wanted to talk about specifically for this week were two things. One, the Breeders' Cup Power Picks. So I'll bring up a quick banner. We have, just for Breeders' Cup only, 2 days, $20. That's all it costs for detailed analysis of both the Friday and Saturday cards. Everyone from the HHH and Betting and Boozing crew are going to be assigned multiple races, and we're going to do full write-ups. We're going to have ABC grids. We're going to have bets, horizontal, vertical. We're going to have top threes. We're going to have basically anything you would want for each of the Breeders' Cup races, and actually ABC grids, I think, from myself, Paul, and Howard for both days, full cards as well. So we're going to be covering both days. $20 total. You get both days. You'll receive a Friday email, or probably a Thursday email. I think it's going to be, actually get it in advance, Thursday email with both documents. So please, if you want to sign up, like I said, now if you're on the website, I know it's pretty hard to find, but here you go. Subscribe to the Breeders' Cup Power Picks. We even have a countdown. So you have to sign up by Wednesday midnight. So that gives you about 4 days, approximately 13 hours. You come on here, you just click on this. It'll take you to the subscription page. You do buy now, and it's through PayPal. So again, $20, definitely sign up. You got until Wednesday, like I said, Wednesday midnight to be officially included. One other thing I wanted to mention on our homepage, and you can see this on our YouTube page as well, but if you happen to be on our website, here's all of our recent podcasts, and a lot of them are related to Breeders' Cup. So if you want to see all of our Breeders' Cup and coverage in one place, easily accessible, you can come here as well. We have the discussion with Cody Dorman, which was awesome. Obviously, the one with Aiden O'Brien, which everybody loved. The foreign horse, the overseas horse preview with Davey Lane, which is always a great one. He goes over so many of the horses and gives a lot of insight on horses that just people in the U.S. don't know. Pre-entry discussion. Here's the Thursday betting and boozing team with the pick 5. Just posted yesterday a great interview with Larry Colmish. You can't beat that. Here's our Saturday edition. We're talking about tomorrow, BCBC contest preview. If you have any interest in contest play in the BCBC or just strategy and stuff overall, definitely jump on this one. It's going to have 3 of the past BCBC. Oh, it says Brad Anderson there. It's actually not. That is a typo. It is Marshall Graham, Drew Coatney, Matt Miller, Howard, and I think Paul. I don't remember if Paul is going to be on or not. Post position draw. We're going to have that on Monday, discussion, and then the big ones on Tuesday. So just be aware this week. Tuesday will be the flagship show discussing the Friday Breeders' Cup card. And then on Wednesday, the flagship show discussing the Saturday card. So again, just be sure we're going to be on off schedules a little bit this week. There's going to be some other shows. So try and pay attention. Like I said, hit that notification bell so you'll know when each of these shows is coming up. Finally, our regular power picks. I know this week it's Breeders' Cup, but we also have our regular power picks, $16 a month, very cheap, $4 a week. You get 2 cards. You get races from 2 different cards on Saturday. Definitely sign up. You can do that from Patreon. And then last thing before we get into the handicapping, I just wanted to put up a little thing for anyone that knows. I want to say congratulations to Shards and the members of Crown's Way Racing, including myself, Kyle, Paul, and Howard, who are part owners in Shards, for officially making it into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint field. Let's bring it home. What do you think about that, Charlie? How's it feel to be even though you're not a direct owner, you're by proxy, we'll give you at least, right?
No, I was excited to hear the news. I loved as soon as we got the little inside scoop from the group chat to find out that it was official. I'm always rooting for the podcast. So yeah, any horse that's, owned by people of the podcast, I kind of feel like you mentioned, by association, I have some connection to the horse. So obviously going to be rooting for Shards and looking forward to the race.
Yeah, it's going to be very exciting. Hopefully we can kick off Breeders' Cup weekend with a win for us and for the Crown's Way folks who are so awesome, and everyone involved with that horse and all the horses, because it's even if you're not a part owner of that, if you're related to Crown's Way in any way, then I assume you're just going to be happy and just to see everyone sort of get lifted up by this. Let's give a quick peruse through the comments. Bill Kelly was here first, so we gave him the award, the Pride Award for being here first and foremost. Thanks, Bill. We got, as usual, Katie's always here. We always love having her on. Horsey Dave. Sorry, it's not Howard today. Horsey Dave, you're stuck with me and Charlie. What else we got? Oh, here we go. There it is. Hey, Pete and Charlie, nice to see you. First race is easy. No, just a couple of speeds. We'll talk about that. We'll actually, Charlie and I are in lockstep. Maiden Focus. Just saw Shards got in. Well, we'll show the one that doesn't have the typo for you, Maiden Focus. There you go. Thank you, King George. Picks. HHH is the best. Let's see. Oh, here we go. I think that's Howard, actually. Live analysis. The draw is not until 7:30. Just announced. So we'll be doing it sort of live. We're doing the post position draw. So please join us for that. Charlie making a last-second trip to Cali next week. Rumors are swirling. What's the word on that, Charlie?
Yeah, it was confirmed yesterday. Spoke to my mom, talked to Noah, appreciate him for the hospitality. And yeah, I will be making it fit in the schedule. I'm going to the Breeders' Cup now, so I'm very excited. I will be flying into Cali for the weekend. We're going to have pretty much as many people from the crew as we've really ever had before, as I've never gotten to be with the guys in person. So yeah, I'll be there for Friday and Saturday's races. Really looking forward to it.
That is fantastic and very exciting. I wish I could be there as well. I was just in California not too long ago and was in Florida last weekend. So I need to take a break and stay home. I was talking to to listener Matt Miller yesterday and friend of the show. And I was telling him, I said, what we should do is if Shards wins, hopefully what you guys can do, I could call on FaceTime. Somebody could bring an iPad into the winner's circle. Oh, look at that. We got the fireworks back. See, it's a great idea. We could put the iPad up. It can have my beautiful face right in the winner's circle. So Charlie, I'm going to put you responsible for that when you get in the winner's circle with them on Friday.
I'll make it happen.
I like it. There we go. See, we got the fireworks again, Howard. All right, well, let's stop wasting time and let's get into what people are here for today. Let's handicap this Keeneland card. All right, so here we go. We're going to start with race 1, claiming 30,000. Let me bring up our picks as well, because me and Charlie are in lockstep in this first one, which I don't think is all that surprising based on the odds. Again, we got claiming 30,000. 3-year-olds and up going 7 furlongs on the dirt. We have a field of 8. By the way, anyone in the comments, if the scratches do come through, please let us know so we can refresh and see them on screen. Or if you know of any scratches in the races we're talking about, give us a shout just so we have an idea. And again, so the favorite, number 8, Dreaming of Smarty, Luis Saez up at 9-5. And that's who you and I are going with, Charlie. Talk to me about Dreaming of Smarty and what you like about this one.
Yeah, so, last time off after that, coming back off the month, getting claimed from John Service, first time start for the trainer, goes out with Paco Lopez, who, was just one of the best in the business and really good at, especially with speed horses, if you need a horse to get on the front, Paco can, get that job done. So Dreaming of Smarty was able to get on that early lead and then just drew off easily, as it notes in the comments, goes on to win by 9, has been working forwardly with at Parks with the 48 flat and the 47 and 2. And I really just, I've touched on this a lot for those of you who watch Benton and Booze and have seen how time and time again I talk about if you have a speed horse, the jockey you want is always going to be Luis Saez because he's the most aggressive jockey in the business. And again, I mean it like in a clean way. I want to make that clear for people. When I say aggressive, I just mean he's able to quickly get his horses out there better than just about anyone. So I just feel like if you have a speed horse, one that's expected to win, if you could pick the jockey on the horse, you probably want Luis Saez. I love the pairing. The horse is working forwardly. I just think Dreaming of Smarty will get on the lead. And even though we've talked about before, you and I aren't the biggest fans of speed horses, I like the fact that the horse drew away to kind of show, that you don't have to worry about potentially fading. So I don't think the distance will be a problem. And I think the 8 is clearly the horse to beat.
Yeah, and I guess the one thing that's always it's always funny with horses like this is when sort of though a performance like that, the thing you sometimes question a little bit is when a performance like that just comes from a little bit out of the blue. And it was before the claim. Obviously, he was claimed in that race, but you worry a little bit. But that was such a dominant performance. It looked so good and visually impressive. So you figure if there's a repeat of that, then this horse should win this race relatively easy. I don't really have anything to add. I agree with pretty much everything you said. Let's jump to, we both have the 7. Again, we're not being overly interesting in this race. We have the second choice, the 7, Born Flawless at 5-2, Morling 9 for Thomas Amos. That's tough to say sometimes. What do you like about this one? This one is actually a little bit similar, where had a winning performance on the front end that sort of came out of nowhere, at least if you're looking at sort of from a figure standpoint.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It's like almost too similar where, you see some like 40s and you're like, okay, you can't touch this horse. And then you get a few 60s getting ridden by Arlington legend Mitchell Merle. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere just decides to show up with, an 83. And obviously you see like the S for the slops. You got to obviously keep that in mind. And the fact that it was a cold pace, I think that's ultimately what made me a little more hesitant. I still think Born Flawless has great speed. You obviously have to respect the jump. It's also nice to see 7 furlongs wasn't a problem for a horse that likes to be on the front. Again, that was honestly my only hesitation, and why I put the 8 on top was simply the fact that the 7 couldn't draw away on a cold pace, whereas the 8 was in a more reasonable pace and was able to draw away comfortably. But still, you also have to respect the 83 speed figure. I mean, they make those the way they do for a reason, and I'd still say they're similar enough that you could kind of go either way. But ultimately, I just felt a little more comfortable with the 8. But certainly, as I know one of our astute viewers had pointed out earlier, it really does, at least on paper, seem like it's going to be one of the 2 outside speeds and just kind of which one can last longer.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess, do you consider having the fact that Dreaming of Smarty is outside of Born Flawless, so Saez can sort of gauge, and if Born Flawless doesn't go out and doesn't gun it, then then Dreaming of Smarty and Saez can sort of clear and take the lead. And if Born Flawless does gun it and Saez can be smart and maybe sit just off. I mean, I guess he's if you get the trip, even two back, I mean, again, it wasn't the greatest of company, but at least was able to sit off, took the lead, didn't win, but that was going a mile and a 16th, but did at least show a little bit of ability to sit off of a horse, pass a horse, and then going a little bit shorter should be able to hold, you would assume. We both have the 3 in third. I assume the way I looked at it, this was more of a, you have to put somebody in the top 3 kind of thing. Is that where you were going, or do you think this horse has any shot to dethrone the top 2?
I actually think the 3 is very live in the spot. It's very much going to be a pace dependent thing. The way I just saw it is, look, if the 2 clear-cut best horses are speed, then anybody who's going to try to push towards the front isn't going to be able to keep up and isn't going to last, which means this 3 is going to pick up the pieces no matter what, and will very likely, again, I just think by process of elimination from everyone else tiring, will get up for at least third. I will say with the 6-1 odds, I think if you feel strongly about one of the 7 or 8 being like the speed that'll get away, I would highly consider putting the 3 underneath. I just think we could get into a situation where, as you kind of touched on, maybe the 8 and 7 battle it out, and then one just tires out from pushing a heavy pace together, and then the 3 just picks up the pieces and gets up for second. I mean, to me, again, I know we're based off of just one freak race from each of them, but you can even argue that with the 3, it was in the 60s and then popped in 80. But you see when there's a hot pace, this horse really comes alive. Last time was 8, almost 9 lengths off the lead, and then goes on to not just win by 2 and change. So the horse clearly had a strong late kick. So I certainly think the 3 is the one like wild card in this spot. That's why I went away from the other low odd, and the 5 is, I think the 5 is going to be towards the front as well. But yeah, I certainly think if there's a pace meltdown, the 3 could win outright, but at the very least could certainly at 6-1 get up as a nice price underneath one of the top 2 favorites.
Yep, I agree with that 100%. I feel like that is one, because generally when you do get 2 speeds, you figure if one does sort of fade away, you're going to look for somebody coming off. And if you're looking for a little bit of a price, even if you want to play it cold or a little bit, sort of Dutch it a little bit and go one over and then put this one on top a little bit on whichever one out of the 7 and 8 you like, I think that's a decent way to start this off and try and get a little bit of a price into it. Anybody else on here you want to talk about? Are you good to move on to the next one?
I think I'm okay. I mean, I know the only other like odds-wise horse that's supposed to be really competitive here is the 5. I just think this pace doesn't really work for City of Clouds. I just think like my concern is the figures. I feel like we kind of know who this horse is. We kind of saw, okay, took the step up from the 50s and 40s to get into the low 70s. And it seems like that's kind of just the peak. Whereas, if any of those 3 that we touched on before, even as a drop off from that freak of, 10 points, you're still above City of Clouds. So for me, I just don't like the value. I mean, I think you'll get more than 7-2, to be honest, because I think a lot of people will see the lack of figures and the fact that this horse likes to probably sit right behind the speed, which isn't really ideal for this kind of race. But I feel like that's the only other odds-wise like contender we didn't touch on.
Yeah, I agree with that one. And you sort of get to the point where even this horse is even regressing a little bit just in turn if you look just at speed figures, although Time Form actually has liked the last couple especially more than Bayer has. So if you look at that, which I like to do, it puts this horse a little bit closer. But I agree that I think if the other 2 run their race, this one would need to step up to be into their sort of on their level, at least with their A game, as opposed to where that one is. All right, we'll move to the second race. We have, let's put our banner up. Second race, we have maiden special weight, purse 100,000, going a mile and a 16th on the turf. We have a field of 12 in the main. Let me check the comments, make sure I didn't miss any scratches today. We have a field of 12 in the main body as of now, with 4 also eligible. So like I said, if there's any scratches or anything, definitely let us know so we could talk through any also eligibles if they pop into the field. The favorite, number 7, Lat Long for McPeak and Hernandez. You are going with the 8. I am going with the 8. I'm going to call this Publius, I'm going to guess. I don't really know how to pronounce it. Is it Publius, right? I watched the race and have no memory of how the announcer was saying it. So talk to me about Publius and why you like this one.
Yeah, so I mean, ran against Copper Missile. Shout out Copper Missile. Had to have a little bit of a wide trip. Really just wasn't able to get started early. But, that can happen on debut, obviously, when horses making their first start. They might not get, that best jump, that best start, and then kind of has that late gain, which is kind of what we saw. It kind of looks like, Publius had to kind of overcompensate for that late start and then still hung in there, but just didn't ultimately have enough in the tank to really get up to the top leaders. Obviously trained by Brad Cox, was certainly not a cheap horse, ridden now by Tyler Gaffleone, who, as I've touched on before, is my favorite in the business. So for me, that's a plus. And, I just like, in comparison to the 7, who I still think certainly is a contender, but for a little more of a reasonable price. And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if the 8 goes off as favoritism, but, has actually run on the surface and looks like a horse where getting as much distance as possible should be more of a benefit. Whereas I don't necessarily know for the 7, a horse that, you see last time out was on the lead and then didn't have enough left in the tank necessarily wants that. So for me, I'll take the slightly more value. I'll trust, one of the best trainer jockeys combos in the business, and Cox and Tyler Gaffleone. And again, I just think this kind of sets up nicely from the surface and distance perspective for the 8 really well.
Yeah, it's funny actually. So I did the Keeneland power picks today, and Publius here was one of my spot play horses. So this was one of my top picks today. So I was happy when I saw that you were on it as well. Mostly everything that you said. I just really liked that. I thought that a few things, it was one of those where in a debut race, sometimes things go wrong. And when things go wrong, I talk about this a lot. When things go wrong, especially in a debut, I like when a horse doesn't get discouraged and a horse keeps running. And this one was way in the back, sort of drifted back to not last because there were 12, but was pretty far in the back. Right out of the gate, stuff was wrong. Broke, and I assume that wasn't, most of the time that's not the plan for anyone, is to be an almost dead last. Then swung by, made a run. It looked like might contend, but he actually sort of flattened a bit, like you said, and actually lost to Copper Missile, who was one of our other ownership, where myself, Kyle, Paul, and Howard own a piece through Crown's Way. So we were actually watching that race pretty intently, and I thought this horse ran well. So when I saw him coming back, I thought, oh, okay, this is one that I think in that second race, I do like the switch to Gaffleone. I had a stat, Brad Cox, second career starters in maiden special weight turf routes, 24 for 79, 30% wins, 60% in the money. So even better than his normal, excellent super statistics. Sure. So it's something that he can do. And again, I agree with you. I just think this is one there, if we can take a little step up, it was a $450,000 horse. So the added distance, you figure with Constitution out of an awesome, again, a little bit of added distance, I assume, is only going to help this horse. I think we're both on the right track there. Let's go to your second horse. Although actually, yeah, we'll do your second horse next, and then we'll talk about the 7. You have a first-time starter for Pletcher and Saez again, Disattached. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think Disattached is really the wild card, which is kind of how it always works, obviously, when you have a first-time starter. And yeah, the last thing I was saying about the 8 real quick that you touched on with the added distance is also, we've talked about before, that Kentucky Downs kind of runs longer. So I always think that's another plus, is if, you did a mile at Kentucky Downs, it shows you can take that added distance because it runs longer. But yeah, going back to Disattached, gets Luis Saez, who, again, I one of the best jockeys in the business, trained for Pletcher. And the horse is working really forwardly. You see the 48-2, the 48-4. So it's nice to see that, Pletcher isn't necessarily known for one of those guys who likes to ramp up his horses. My good friend that I always talk about, Wesley Ward, he's certainly the one who's more so in terms of those top trainers who likes to have them working forwardly. So for me, that's just another plus for Disattached. Is, you normally see Pletchers all the time do well that have, your 49s, your high 48s at times, your minute ones, your high minutes for 5 furlongs, and they still go on and do incredible. So for me to see a Pletcher horse that's working this forwardly has to be paid attention to. Again, I also think with Luis, he's one of the top jockeys there, so he's certainly getting one of the highest preferences. So if he's taking this first-time starter, he probably sees those fast workouts too and sees some intrigue. Obviously, the question is going to be, how does the horse do going a mile 16th? Certainly tough on debut when you're running one of those longer races in comparison to 5 or 6 furlongs. But I think Disattached, obviously one where you have to watch the board as a first-time starter, but I think certainly is an interesting one.
Yeah, I agree. I actually had, I think on here, I had a stat, which I was checking because, you don't think of Pletcher necessarily on turf right out of the gate, especially in Pletcher, 4 for 12 wins, 9 for 12 in the money, first-time starters in maiden special weight turf routes outside of New York. Not as good in New York, which was funny. And then the Pletcher-Rapoli combo, 1 for 15 first-time starters in turf routes. So again, just weird little statistics that surprised me one way or the other. I don't know if it means anything in this race, but I like this horse as well. This was probably my 4th horse. So it was pretty close to making the top 3. So I'm with you there. Let's go down to the 7. I have the 7 in second. You have the 7 in third. Lat Long, two pretty good races against, the last one, Door Knock, is a pretty good horse against quality fields, excellent buyers, especially in conjunction with the rest of this field. So what did you think about this one now moving to the turf and seeing if this one can actually translate that form to the turf against this field? What do you think?
Well, that's ultimately my question. I'd say like the main couple concerns I'd say I have is number one, as we've kind of touched on, and something again, as I've been on these shows and learned more about horse racing, is normally, seeing that big jump from your first start to your second start. So I feel like not necessarily seeing that big jump. It's very early in Lat Long's career. So there's certainly a bunch of untapped potential that could be there. But for me, made me a little more hesitant. And then I'd also just say, again, like you're switching services. So, maybe they want the horse on the turf and they've been trying to wait to get to this point. But I will say, like with the distancing, the horse was right on the lead and then falls back to 7 lengths back, weakening. And again, I mean, certainly the positive with the 7 is the fact that the other main contender in the 8 is certainly going to be sitting back. So if, the 7's able to just get away and nobody can really keep up with the 7, Lat Long might just run away with the race and wire them, which is entirely possible. I'm just banking on the fact that, again, also I don't love the value at 5-2. I'd rather take the chance on the horse at 4-1 who seems to want distance and has been on the surface. So I'd take that value. I certainly think Lat Long's a contender. It's just, again, for me, if we're looking at a value perspective, I just don't see a horse that's never run on the surface and fated to lose by 7 as a horse I want to bet to win at 5-2.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I struggled with this one too, even in trying to consider when I was doing the picks where we do sort of the ABC grids and where you're gonna place a horse and things like that. But I think this one, again, on talent, you figure has shown enough talent to definitely fit with the rest of this field and maybe sits on top of them a little bit, but you just don't know. And again, though, I agree with you. We have a horse that hopefully is a little closer in Publius than last time, but if not, then again, just from a tactical advantage, I think Lat Long can get on the lead or sit just off the lead and can maybe get away, and then they're going to have to come catch him, and we're going to see if he can hold. And again, maybe he takes to the turf and maybe his speed holds a little better on the turf. I guess we'll see. It's always hard to know when they switch surfaces, especially at a young age like this. The last one I want to touch on, the 3. Did you consider the 3 at all when you were looking at this horse? This was one where I just thought the first race, Kentucky Downs, is always weird. Some horses take to it, some horses don't. This horse was the favorite there, was sitting close to the pace, and then just dropped off the face of the map, basically. So I wonder if this is one where you give a pass. It was a horse that took money, was well thought of, how to justify, and now maybe getting back to a race on a track that maybe it'll be a little bit more conducive to. I don't know. You have any thoughts on the 3? Did you consider this one at all?
Yeah, we really, even though it doesn't necessarily to the extent of the last race, we really are sticking together with the same picks. For me, the 3 was also my 4th choice. That was like how it was with
That's
the 2
funny.
for you. Honestly, again, like you mentioned, I mean, the works still show that this horse is revamped up and ready for a much better effort with, minute flat, 48. And I obviously big fan of Brendan Walsh personally, and Flavien Prat's one of the best turf riding jockeys in the world. I'd say what I'm kind of banking for, to be honest, I think you would kind of agree, is with when you talk about the early speed, I'm hoping for our sake and with the power picks is that the 3 and the 7 kind of send together and battle it out. And ideally tire each other, which then sets up the 8. And then again, for me, the 2 is just a wild card. The only slight knock I had, and I know I don't like, because again, Flavien Prat's unbelievable. And I don't like to play, the jockey gymnastics, but I will point out that Gaffalione and Walsh are consistently one of the best duos, especially at Kentucky Downs, and they love working together. So for me, it was just something to note that Gaffalione would switch to the 8 for me just is a little bit of red flag, only because him and Brendan Walsh raced together pretty much more than any other combination. And this horse took money, clearly is supposed to be good and is working forwardly. So I feel like if Tyler necessarily thought it was just the track and there's going to be a bounce back win, I think he would have stuck with the 3. So that would be my slight hesitance, but certainly for being in the money, I could see it. And again, it could also be one of those things, where if other horses don't fire or don't really show up, which a lot of these have shown, and maybe the 2 needs this start and doesn't have a great effort, you could certainly at the very least get the 3 in the money. And if you're looking for value rather than, going chalk with the 8 and the 7, you could certainly make a legitimate argument for the 3 in there for a bounce back at 8-1.
Yeah, I mean, in any of these races, it's never a bad thing to look for a price unless you see a horse that just sort of lays over the field. Obviously, in a race like this,
Right.
where I thought it was pretty wide open, which is why you're surprised. I was surprised when I landed on Publius as one of my sort of top choices, but I just really liked a lot of things about him. But I do think if not him, I can go a few different places, and you can definitely go price shopping. Anyone else you want to hit on in this race, or you think we're good?
The only other one I want to touch on, it wasn't really, I guess, my personal opinion, but I can see it. I think someone in our chat had said that they really liked the 6 in the spot, which is a bit interesting to me. Another first-time starter ridden by Jose Ortiz. I mean, really just consistently been working on the all-weather. Workouts haven't been bad by any means. I mean, you see, way back at the beginning of September at a 47-1. So certainly shown flashes. I guess for me, my concern is just that the horse is consistently on the all-weather, and that, I don't know, there's just a lot of question marks. So for me personally, I would stay away. But again, as we've touched on before, when you have these first-time starters, watch the board, because if this 6 takes a lot of money, maybe it is a live horse here.
Yeah, there were two notes that I had. So on the Dam side, the Dam had one other starter who was actually 2 for 4 wins on the turf. So there was a little bit of a turf victories for under well acquainted. The negative stat I had, Jonathan Thomas, 0 for 25 first time starters in turf routes in the past 2 years. So when I looked at that, I was like, I'm not sure if I want to jump on a first time starter with a trainer who's been struggling a bit, and with what you said, who has been consistently working. Yes, on the, obviously the all weather would translate a little bit better to the turf, but you just don't know. So I'm just not sure with this one. It was one that I considered as sort of like a second level horse for me, but I couldn't put that one sort of near the top. Anyone else, or you think we're good to move on?
No, I think we're good to move on.
Okay, let's go to the third. Clicking like an idiot there. Third race, we have allowance optional claiming, 125, going a 1 1/8 on the dirt. We got a field of 7. I'm going to let you talk about this race because I pretty much hated this race. We have 7.
So
it was awful. We got the favorite, Dubinel. I never can pronounce this horse. Dubinel, 5-2. Let's bring up our batters. Let's see. I think we are. Yeah, I think we're not in lockstep on this one. You're going with the 3 here. Let's bring up the PPs. You're going with the horse who I cannot pronounce for the life of me. All right, talk to me about this one. This is one that I wound up tossing. You tell me why I'm stupid for tossing him.
I can't call you stupid. I mean, your top pick, King Ice. For a little while I was sticking with King Ice, and then I ultimately just got scared off because I thought that the horse kind of just freaked and benefited from just like a really hot pace. I think that kind of just helped King Ice. So I was a little worried about that. But this race is tough. I mean, again, I'm going against everything I stand for, and the fact that it's a longer race, and I like to go with heavy closers. So what do? I go with the speed horse that lost by 35 lengths last time out. For me, my angle is honestly just look. The fact that Tyler's picking up the horse, for me, again, we've touched on this before. I know you can't pin everything on the jockeys, but certainly, again, when you have Tyler Gaffalione, Johnny Vasquez, Luis Saez, like when you have some of the top jockeys that are here that are taking a chance on a horse, there's always something there. I've touched this before. I remember one time I was at Gulfstream and there was some horse that was 18-1, one of the longest shots in the field. And I just put a few bucks on it only because Luis Saez chose to take the ride and the horse won. So I feel like a lot of times with these jockeys, if they're getting first preference, they see something. For me, it's just you look way back. I know it was all the way back in December of 22, but that 90 figure, that was still in a grade 2 race. I mean, you have to look, if you just look at the competition standpoint, this 3 horse ran in a grade 2, a grade 3, and then the Florida Derby going against Forte, who was the best horse, in the country at the time. And then obviously had the unfortunate injury, Mage, who was, my Kentucky Derby pick I gave out to win at 17-1. So those are 2 horses I love. Cyclone Mischief, who, at the time was really a very talented horse. And then all of a sudden kind of just got upset as a big favorite, and people started to write off. Also went against Instant Coffee, who's a great horse. So for me, I just think the 3 who is, I'm not going to say the name because I also can't pronounce it, to be honest, but it's just been running against so much stronger competition. I feel like maybe it's a bit of almost like an overreaction, steep drop down, with the fact that they got a major reality check and that putting this horse in the Florida Derby, this horse was not ready for that race at all. So I'm just kind of banking on the fact that, look, you're putting it in a significantly easier competition. Non-2 winners and an allowance of 125,000 is not quite the Florida Derby. So I feel like this is a pretty steady drop down. So I'm kind of, again, hoping through that this horse can bounce back.
Yeah, this was a tough one because you look at it and go, it's always hard to gauge. Oh, look at the competition they ran against, and you're like, but did he really run against them? I mean, he lost by 19 and 35, so it's like you could have put a donkey in there, and they could have almost done. So I always have a hard time sometimes separating. Yeah, they were in a good race, but I mean, if you look, they were just two really bad races. And again, the quality was much better here. The way I look at it is it's a 5-2 shot who, if you're going to take a chance against a 5-2 shot, you take a chance against a horse who just doesn't look, who hasn't shown anything in the two races this year, is now coming off a layoff. And the other thing that sort of swung me against was the two best races, at least the two races this horse won, both were in the slop. So could it just be this horse has an affinity for the slop? But again, this is such a class drop that you just don't know. So I went with the opposite of you. I went with the screw it. Let's toss the horse. At least I think I put him, if I was looking at like an ABC, I think I put him in as like a C or something. But I'm more, which probably is even stupid to begin with. It's almost just either toss it or you like him on top because of just the class relief, I think.
Yeah, and there's not enough value. Yeah, I agree.
That
I
was
will
my
say the
only
only other
concern, yeah.
excuse that I will give is the horse was obviously bet down to favoritism 2 back and got steadied, and that kind of just ruined the horse's
Yeah.
race. So I will say for that one, I think it's a little more of an over. Again, for me, it's just tough because, as you mentioned, it could be the slot, but I think certainly, obviously, we'll never know what could have happened. But if the horse didn't get steadied so badly, 2 back maybe could have run him more competitive, and then you realistically look and say, oh, it was only the Florida Derby where this horse was terrible. And to be honest, I just don't think the horse was really meant to be in the Derby. I mean, you see the horse was 23-1, so it looks like the public felt the same way. So I feel like you're right. It's certainly one of those where you have to feel one way or the other. And I just feel like, if Gaffleone's taking up the horse, I'm trusting that. Again, I don't love the value. I don't love this race, period, but I'm trusting that Gaffleone thinks this horse can do something on the class drop.
Yeah, this is one.
And I like the Lasix as well.
The end of Lasix could be it, because maybe that was the problem in the two this year. So that's a good point. I forgot to mention that. That could be. And again, if the horse could win by 5, and I wouldn't be completely shocked. And this is a race where if we didn't have to talk about it, I probably would have skipped right over it, in all honesty.
Agreed.
Let's talk about so I had King Ice on top. You said you were back and forth on this horse. What was the thing that almost had you pick the horse, and what was the thing that went you go against the horse ultimately?
So what was going to have me pick the horse is this is my favorite kind of horse that there is, a deep closer in a distance race. I love these horses. I mean, again, as someone who grew up going to Arlington, there's nothing better than watching people who don't know the sport getting all excited that their speed horse at 20-1 is in the front and they're all celebrating. And then my horse comes flying out of the parking lot out of nowhere and goes by everyone.
Runs
so I
them
love
down.
the
I
style.
love it.
Exactly. I love King Ice's style. I mean, you see was behind by 14 lengths and comes back to win by 3 a few back. By 10 lengths and wins. The only concern, and this is why, again, the problem is I feel like this is with pretty much every horse, unfortunately. There's a lot of low prices for a lot of horses that don't deserve to be low prices, and I think it's because the odds makers understand that there really is no clear-cut horse. So for me, the concern is with King Ice, the only hesitation, I'd have this horse as my 4th choice for sure, maybe even 3rd, was just the fact that I feel like if there isn't a hot pace, this horse is basically in trouble. I mean, if you look at the history, if there's no hot pace, the horse can't get it done. And my concern is, you could have some of these horses towards the front that none of them really want to just send. They might go to the front, but they might choose to slow things down and try to have more of a slow fraction. And I feel like if that happens, King Ice is in a lot of trouble. So for me, I just at 4-1, I couldn't put the horse somewhere where I knew, like, if there's no hot pace, this horse is pretty much in deep trouble.
That's all fair, and I don't even have a ton. I don't have a ton to disagree with there on sort of going against it. The positives for me, like you talked about, I'm a sucker for a deep closer. Me and you, and I think that's why we're simpatico on that. We're both suckers for the deep closers, to our detriment, I assume, more often than not. We need to find another. Back in the harness days, used to be able to close a little better. I used to be a lot more successful with the closers. But one thing I did like, we are getting the extra distance with this horse. We're going a mile and an eighth. Again, if you just look at the breeding, Keen Ice out of Curlin, obviously we have out of Umbrato Express. I just think this horse will like the extra distance. And the one thing I did like is some of the other horses in this race, they're almost what they are. Some of them, like Dennington and not with their and Dubinell, whoever the hell that name is. They are what they are, and I don't love any of them. This one, for some reason, it was at Indiana, so it's not exactly the highest competition. But I like the improvement where if you look at every dirt race, at least from a buyer standpoint and from a time form standpoint, you're getting improvement each race. So this horse does seem to be getting better. at that point, if I'm looking at it going, is there a little bit of upside still left in this horse? If we do get some pace, maybe we can close into it. That's where I'm going. In a race full of horses I just don't like that much, I'm going to take a shot with one that I think is still on the upswing, and we'll see where we can go. So you have in second, you have the 5, the aforementioned Dennington. I have this horse in third. This is one that, I mean, if you look from a figure standpoint, fits very well, has been in good company, graded stakes, listed stakes, is always right there, has lost to some very good horses, just doesn't seem like the winning type of horse to me. And that was sort of my concern. This looks like one of those that'll just keep getting checks for the rest of, get a bunch of checks for the rest of his life, but doesn't necessarily win the races. What were your thoughts on this one?
See, for me, the reason this race is so tough is I legitimately, and I'll touch on it with my next horse as well. Even though I like the 3, I could talk myself into believing the 5 and my third choice, the 4, could also win this race, and the 6. The problem is, I wish I could say I'm talking myself into these different horses because I'm like, oh my God, they're unbelievable. But it's more so because I see certain flaws where I'm like, oh, the other horse doesn't necessarily have those flaws, but they have other ones, so they could talk themselves into it. But I feel like with Dennington, you're right. This horse runs its race. I mean, you do have to say, from a figures perspective, the 5, in my opinion at least, is overwhelmingly the best horse in this race. I mean, you see the 89, the 86, the 84, the 90, the 93. This horse has shown a ton of promise and ability and has run in some very tough races. You see multiple Derby races this horse has been a part of. And again, as you mentioned, has been in there, but that was my knock on this horse. Is it 3-1? Do I want a horse where Dennington's going to run its race? You know that he's going to be right in and around the lead. I mean, I feel like if you were to say you can only bet one horse to finish top 3, I would be taking this 5. You know this horse will run a strong race and will be in there. The problem is, like you touched on, this horse's last win is February of 23. And for a horse that's been incredibly active, that's not like it's only been a few races. That's my concern. I feel like this horse will run a good race. You don't have to worry about, which I will say maybe is something you do want to take a chance on, and it's not as much of a wild card as my 3. But I feel like at a similar price range and one where people might see that more conservative angle of a horse that's been consistent and bet this horse down even more. I just don't know if I want a horse where I know this horse will finish top 2, top 3, top 4 every race, but I don't see why I should believe this horse will actually get the job done.
Yeah, I actually, not to beleaguer this one too much, but the last 3 where I thought when you were looking at some of the class that this horse was running against here and was running okay, was, finishing in the top 4 or 5. I felt like in one of these last couple, this horse should have won. And the, 2 back was $1.90, it was 8-1 last time. But if you, at some point you got to win a race and you got to beat a field. Now, maybe this drop into this class is the one that'll get this one over the hump. But again, like you said, at 3-1, I don't necessarily need to know. And if the horse beats me, again, this is sort of an ABC grid. I think I would have this horse because obviously talent wise, I think fits, but it's just not one at 3-1 that I'm too excited to have on the top. The last one I'll talk about, the 2, I had the 2 horse in second. You don't have the 2 at all. Promise Me Ride. This is another one that, again, I don't really have great cases for everyone. The one thing I did like, though, was the last race just didn't get the trip. If you look at this horse, the best races this horse has run have been when he's been closer to the pace. So, you see 2 back, he was sitting, or I should say, I had my cursor on the wrong screen. 2 back, he's sitting here, he's sitting right off the pace. He wounds up winning by 6. In his debut, he does the same thing. Even here on the turf, he was on the lead. When he can't break and when he's in the further back, that's when he ran his worst races. So my thought was, maybe this horse from the 2 hole gets a better break, gets better position, gets to put himself in the race a little bit more, and then he can sort of run what I think his best race is going to be. My only question was, I feel like he might be just better a little bit shorter, and that was my concern on the top end. What were your thoughts on this one? Any consideration, or are you just totally against?
I mean, look, I certainly, again, in a race like this, I think there's an argument for just about any horse. For me, I kind of had the same angle as you in terms of looking for a little more value as my third pick. And I ultimately just went with the 4 Bromley, who I think is the real wild card in the spot. Love that Bromley's getting Johnny V. And I think, again, if you're looking for value, and I saw someone in the chat kind of touch on, like, try to eliminate flaws and, like, throw a dart. I think, again, if you're looking for value in a horse and you're being like, okay, well, we've talked about this 6, we've talked about the 5, we talked about the 3, and they have concerns. And with a horse with that many flaws, why would I want to bet a horse at 3-1, 5-2, 4-1? So if you're looking with a horse that sure has some flaws, but has shown strong promise, and you're looking for value, I think Bromley's the way to go. I mean, you're looking at a horse that's 8-1 that has I think arguably is the most tactical horse in this race. I mean, you look early in the career, right? Sits right off the pace, goes on to win 2 straight races. Then obviously dropped that dud where the horse just, I mean, ran against 2 Phils who, was unbelievable in the Derby, ran against Instant Coffee, just wasn't ready for that spot, quite honestly. But then after that comes back and starts way back, which we've never seen from this horse before, rallies all the way up. And then ultimately, after trying to rally up for the first time, I think the horse was just not used to that. And it was an incredibly fast pace and ultimately just took too much energy to make up that ground for the first time and then faded back. And then you see last time another still respectable effort with 2 decent figures that, I mean, look, they're not unbelievable, but I mean, look, my 3 had a 44 and a 47, the 5 only had a 75. I know the 6 had an 87, but before that a 68. So I think there's a very legitimate argument that Bromley is as competitive and legit as any other horse in this race. And again, from a horse where, unlike some of these others where we've kind of touched on, they either are going to have to be away at the back, they're going to be towards the front. How about a horse that can really just let the way the race goes dictate? And if you want a jockey who can respond, who has seen it all and can really figure out where to put a horse depending on how it's developing, who better to have than Johnny V? I just think this is very nice. I don't know. I feel like the more I'm talking, the more if I were betting this race, the more I feel like I would probably bet the 4, just because, again, if you're telling me I have to take a horse with as many flaws as we've touched on these main contenders at 3-1, and I could take a chance on this horse at 8-1, it's hard not to consider it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And this is probably my 4th choice. And I wrestled with this one near the top as well. So I agree with everything you said. The distance maybe was a little bit of a stretch for me. And that was I wasn't sure. So my only concern, but I like this horse. I think I even like this horse maybe 2 back in that race that you were talking about in the Battaglia. But I wound up going the other way, but this was definitely one that I consider. We had a question here. What are the RU numbers on the PPs? That's actually the run up. So you could see that there's a different run up and that basically when they break out of the gate and how far they have to go before they start timing the race, basically, I think is the easiest definition. If not, somebody throw in the chat a better one than that. But yeah, in the version that I use, it always pops up on here. So I don't pay enough attention to it very often, but I keep it on here just in case I do remember to look at it. You're welcome. You're welcome, Jimmy. So there was a question in the comments. I guess the scratches. Let me refresh.
Yeah, the scratches are out. I can read them if you want, so you can keep the screen up.
Let me I'll refresh and we'll see because they didn't. They came up, but they didn't hit. They didn't hit here yet. So you have did anyone scratch that we liked or talked about in any of the races? What do you got so far?
Not that we've liked, but so in race 1, the 6 Roman Giant scratched. Race 2, the 5 Jaybird Time and the 9 Polar Bear Plunge scratched, as well as the additional entries in the 13, 14, and 16. Race 3, no changes. Race 4, it's just the additional entries as well, 13, 14, 15. And then in the last race, we cover race 5. I don't know if you have, I don't, but the 1 and 8 have both scratched as well as 14, 15, 16.
Okay, cool. Actually, that was funny. That 5 horse in the 5 horse in the, I think the second, where was it? Yeah, Jaybird Time. That was actually a long shot. I liked a little bit underneath. So that one's out. I did see someone mention the 15 Buffoon. Did you look at Buffoon? Did you look at the also entered in here? Someone mentioned that they'd like to hear if we had any thoughts on Buffoon, the 15 for Maker in the second, since that one actually got in. Did you look at that one at all? I didn't study the AEs as much yet. I usually do that after I see the scratches. Any thoughts?
I'm the same way, but I mean, looking at the horse, I can certainly see why. I mean, you're getting Joel Rosario, Michael Maker, who's, one of the best trainers in the business. And I mean, look, lost by 3 lengths, kind of just was sitting there around the whole time, but you see in the notes, the horse got bumped and steadied, so it didn't get a clean trip. So yeah, I certainly think the horse could be a legitimate contender to the spot. I don't see why not in a race that's wide open. Again, for me personally, again, if you're looking for more value, I would certainly say it's a contender underneath. But for me, again, as we've kind of touched on, I really like this race for the 8. So, but yeah, if you're looking for a horse underneath, I certainly like if you get the value to put Buffoon underneath maybe the 8 or whoever is the horse that, from those at home you feel strong about on top.
Yeah. Plus, you see, he lost to Agat Road, who's going to be in the Breeders' Cup and is high quality. And yeah, I think that's one question not a question. It's one reminder for everyone is I'm bad at this sometimes, where I sometimes don't always, I forget after the scratches, I don't go back and revisit, especially from a pace standpoint. When the AEs get in, the pace standpoint, and depending on the scratches, the pace standpoint can change and stuff. And I sometimes forget to go back and sort of adjust what my thoughts after that. But let's jump to the 4th. We'll go to the 4th here. Maiden Special Weight. We'll try and zip through these last couple so we don't go too long. Maiden Special Weight, 100,000, 6 furlongs on the dirt, a field of 12. Did you say there were any scratches in here? I can't remember. I apologize.
No, you're good. Race 4, just 13, 14, and 15. So
okay, so the body of the field is still in. We have a field of 12. We have a pretty soft favorite in this one, the 4, Foxfire. You're going with the 10, Insensitive. Let's jump to the PPs here. Talk to me about what you like about the 10. This is one of the races where at least on the top, we differ a little bit finally.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think this is more of a spread race. If you're playing the pick 5, I think this is definitely one of those where I feel like the race before, because there's such short prices, you can't really spread. You kind of just have to either stand on one of the favorites or maybe take one of the favorites with a price like my 4 or your 2. But yeah, for this one, I think you certainly can and need to spread considering how much value there is. And as you mentioned, the soft favorites. For Insensitive, again, it's tough. There's a lot of horses you have a legitimate argument with. I mean, I liked the Sharp Workout recently. I also like the fact that when this horse, raced at Keeneland going 7 furlongs, I know we're obviously going 6, but nonetheless still at Keeneland, that was the horse's best effort to date. So for me, and also the first time the horse got to run there and off a pretty decent, not a major layoff, but, still running from June until October, certainly took a little bit of a break. So I like the fact that, came back first time out off the slight layoff, didn't take a major step forward, but nonetheless showed the ability after staying back, had the, went off as the favorite as well. So the public felt the same way. And I just like that even though the horse didn't necessarily have the best, start to the race and was kind of sitting probably a little farther back than they would have liked, still showed a lot of interest and was willing to try to get up there. And unfortunately just had too much to do for a horse that I think needs to be sitting just off the leaders rather than like a true stalker to closer kind of role. But I think Insensitive certainly interested, and I like the value at 9-2.
Yeah, this was obviously one that I considered. I agree with you. I think this is one I actually wound up my top choice is a horse that I put on our power picks as one of my spot or price plays. But basically the 10 was one that I was definitely considering. I like what you said. There's been an improvement. You're talking about 3 straight lifetime buyer top. So basically, again, if you're looking at buyers, you figure at least this one is on the improve. Came back after a little bit of a break, like you said, and ran the best race of his life, or her life. Sorry, apologies. That's a first drink of the day for the misgender. But I do like at least there's improvement, and you get that little bit of a break, and maybe she's just freshened, and if you can get another step forward here, you're going to see that. One thing I didn't like, I had the Doug Anderson. He was, what's the number? 1 for 23 at Keeneland. So for whatever reason, bringing horses to Keeneland, he hasn't had the best luck on the win end. So that was my hope with this one. This is another one where even just looking at the races, maybe is turning into sort of a Dennington type, always right there, but maybe doesn't get you the win. So that was where I was able to, I think, go away from this horse a bit. Let's go to my top choice. I went with I had a real tough time because I really liked the 1. I really like the 12. I sort of like the bookend horses here. I wound up going with the 1 on top as my top choice. And like I said, one of my plays on the power picks. When you watch this race, and I won't necessarily go to it because there wasn't anything super that jumps out, but the horse just got the lead. So basically ran the winning race that you like, got the lead, and then was just super green. It was one of those races where it was back and forth in the stretch, all over the track, couldn't run straight. It was almost like Saez couldn't handle the horse a little bit, then dipped back a little bit, got pinched, just got super weird and green in the stretch. So my thought was that was the debut. Let's take a move forward. Now we switch to Jose Ortiz. I'm hoping Jose can sort of keep this horse in line. Maybe just since that race, we've had 2 work since that race. You see, we have the 47 and 4, 2 out of 100, 2 almost, basically almost bullets. You get the nice 5 furlong blowout here for going 1 minute and 2. I'm like, maybe this horse is just really sharp still. And if she can get herself just straightened out, which again, may not happen in her second race, it may take a little longer, but if she can straighten herself out, I think she's got the talent. And if she can make the same move last time and then stay straight and actually run, there we go. I like that. Katie, Jose had the 4-win day yesterday. Let's just carry that right over to today. I think if this one can get a straight run, I like this one at the price. I figure maybe from the rail, there's a lot of horses in here, so hopefully it doesn't get shuffled, but maybe from the rail, Jose can work out a trip. And so every time I kept looking back at this horse, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put this horse as one of my top choices. Any thoughts on this one?
No, I originally had this horse in third. I just ultimately didn't want to go. Not, I guess that it's chalky chalk when you consider that everybody's a price, but I just kind of wanted to just throw in one wild card since I feel like this race is so open. So that's why I took the one off. But no, I certainly think this horse is interesting. I think Musical Prayer could absolutely win, as you touched on. Kind of had the awkward start and then the awkward trip towards the end getting green. I don't love this horse on the rail. I mean, I like the fact that in such a big field, the horse isn't necessarily all the way to the outside. That was my one hesitation, is if this horse kind of gets buried on the rail at all and can again kind of get worked up by that, that could potentially hurt. But I mean, look, again, as you touched on, it's 6-1, plenty of value there, and certainly a legitimate contender. I think there's a lot of horses you go in many which ways, and I'm excited to hear what you think about the 12, because I think kind of goes with what I think about the 3, where you're kind of just looking maybe for a first-time starter and new blood in a race where I guess a lot of the ones that have run haven't really proven to be some unbeatable horses.
Yeah, real quick, we don't have to go too long on the next of these, but what did you think? You have Foxfire, the 4-horse, 7-2, the favorite, I think was the favorite, right? We said the Foxfire. So you have him as your second choice. I have her third. Beat my horse in that race, got a little bit of a better trip. What did you like about this one? Was this one, you think this one is just going to improve off that and should run a better race this time? Because, I mean, it was right there and ran a quality race, just couldn't close the deal.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm hoping Foxfire can, again, just sit right off the lead. Honestly, again, what it kind of came down to is I also like the gate a little bit more, again, compared to the one. I kind of like the idea that Foxfire can kind of be like not so far outside that the horse has to work getting across a bunch of horses, but also doesn't have to fear about getting trapped. And I think Foxfire could potentially just sit a nice race towards the inside, just behind the top speed. And again, I just think, unfortunately, I think the 1 and 4 are very similar level horses. I just think this could be another one of those races where the 4 benefits from the nicer trip. And, maybe again, second time out can take that next step forward and be able to actually finish and get the job done. As you mentioned, ran a very solid race and was sitting just off a pretty hot pace. And, maybe if this race isn't, if this race can kind of work out again like last time, maybe the horse takes that step forward to get the job done. Again, I don't necessarily love the 7-2 odds, but I mean, I think you could legitimately argue that this would be like the safest bet in the race, and the idea that the horse certainly looks primed for a step forward and, had a workout in 48-2 that was solid. And then I'll just touch on real quick, because the horse is just above. For Rare Affair, I was just kind of looking for a wild card. I mean, look, it's a first-time starter. They get the Lasix, wasn't a cheap horse, and, has some exciting workouts. Had that 47-4 a little back, had a 36-3, a few 37 flats. I was looking for a price. I didn't want to go 3 of the top favorites in a race where you really have no clue who's going to win. And again, honestly, I feel like if there was a race for some long shot first-time starter to just explode onto the scene and happen to win, I feel like this is one of those races where when you look at this field, it wouldn't be something where you'd be like, wow, I never would have expected that to be possible. And I'm guessing, obviously not quite as big of a long shot, but that's what you were probably thinking with the 12.
Yeah, it's similar, but in this one, it was more, there were some statistical things. And the thing that I was at first, I think if this horse had maybe a better post, I would have been a little more favorable. It's just hard on debut to come from the 12 hole, even with Pratt, you're a Cox horse. But I mean, I like Practical Joke is just great with the young horses, especially when you're sprinting. So just being at a Practical Joke, the connections are great. And there were just a lot of statistical things that I like. Aside from, I mean, you could see here we had the Bullet 101. I mean, it's not like it was blazing, but the workouts have been solid, if not unspectacular, but solid enough to where you're comfortable with them. And then I just thought that, so on the dam side, so we know Practical Joke is excellent. The dam side, 18 for 31 in the money in dirt sprints, so definitely has an affinity for that. We know that, Practical Joke is excellent in dirt sprints. Also, the Cox-Pratt combo, 5 for 12 wins, 10 for 12 in the money, first-time starters. And there were just a bunch of other Brad Cox stats. And again, all the combination of those led me to say this could be a first-time starter. We're getting morning line 8-1 that I think is pretty live, picking up Pratt. My concern is you're in the 12 hole. Who the hell knows what's going to happen from out there? It's just a lot to ask for a young horse on debut to deal with. But I think this horse maybe has the talent and obviously has the connections to make some noise here. But I went the other way, mostly because of the 12, I think.
That's how I felt as well. I think the horse certainly has a chance. I just don't love, in a full field of 12, having your first-time starter all the way out there. Just a little scary.
Okay, so we're in agreement there. So let's move to, we'll knock out the last one in the sequence. We have race 5, an allowance. And again, let me refresh.
Scratch.
They hit now. So we got the scratch the 1, scratch the 8. I actually like the 8 as sort of another one as a couple of my long shot underneath horses have actually scratched today. So we have the 1 and the 8, but we have a field of, however, that leaves us 11, I imagine. We have the favorite number 9, Clever Thought. Let's bring up our picks. We are sort of back in lockstep again. You and I are both going with the 5, Hilliard. What do you like about this one? Let's bring up the PPs and take a look.
Yeah, I was going to see if this is one of your power picks because I love the value on this horse. And I feel like if we're talking about a deep closer, I mean, I feel like this horse was literally only put in this card because they thought
you want to laugh.
This
horse was, I mean, this was my last. I didn't put it as one of my plays, but it was this close. I was like, do I want to add one more and add this 5? And ultimately I wound up, I'm actually looking at the picks now just to make sure. I actually wound up not, but it was very close. I wound up using it in a double, in the backside of a double on the power picks as one of my sort of other bets. So it was super close. So I'm with you. And yeah, this is our kind of horse right here, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I feel like for this, early pick 5, I think we both kind of feel like the first 2 races we were in agreement and feel pretty strong. This race, I mean, I'll let you speak for yourself as well, but I do have a strong opinion. I feel like it's really those middle 2, the 3 and the 4, where you have the bunch of short prices that are unproven and then the wide open field where it's going to get really tough for people. But yeah, now I'm happy. I'm back in a race where I'm genuinely really excited and confident. Look, I just love this spot for Hilliard. I mean, ran a mile in 5:16, said Kentucky Downs, which is really like 17 miles. I mean, when you're running long at that kind of track, it feels like it never ends. So I feel like distance-wise, you certainly don't have to be worried at all. If you're worried that someone will take the angle, oh, well, maybe the horse just liked a bizarre track, ran at Saratoga 2 back, going a mile in the 16th and was able to close up and nearly got there. And the other thing I really just like, that was the effort that more so got me excited, was I didn't have to worry, oh, was it because Kentucky Downs is never ending? Was it because it was a hot pace for a closer? But again, you look 2 back at a much shorter distance on a track that plays to its regular distance and at a reasonable standard pace. Even I think you could argue a slightly slow pace. And this horse still from 6 lengths back closed up to within 3/4 of a length. So I don't know. I love this race for Hilliard. I love how it sets up. I certainly think the 9 is the other main contender to the spot, but I don't know. I just feel like the 9 is the similar kind of issue of another deep closer, and I think because it's size and Pletcher, maybe that's why the horse will be the favorite, is people just prefer Pletcher over Maker. But I don't know, the horse just hasn't really, I get some of the pace has been cold, but I just haven't seen that same kind of strong close. And I feel like Hilliard is a little more versatile. I think he'll be a little more forward. And I think Hilliard is the stronger late kick of the 2, to be honest. I just think this race is perfect for Hilliard, where if you're saying the other main contender I have to go up against is a slower closer with not as strong of a kick, who hasn't been able to really take advantage in any sort of pace with that closing speed to actually get the job done. And to be honest, to me, kind of feels more like a bit of a money burner. I love Hilliard in the spot a lot. I really do think this is a nice spot. And I like that Joel rode this horse so well.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I agree with you on the 5. And the one thing I did like is that once this horse moved to Maker, the 3 races on the turf have all been. Now, again, the biggest problem with this horse, and we see it right here, is the 2 for 24. So you always run the risk with closers that they're just not going to get there. And they get to a point in their career where they just don't know how to get there at the end. So at 7-2, between this horse and the 9, you're getting 2 favorites who are going to be coming off the pace, always have a chance to be pace compromised. That's the concern. So, and that's I think ultimately that's why I didn't put this horse as one of my main plays, even though I was sort of with you. I really wanted to like this horse. I really wanted to put this horse, maybe if the odds were a little bit better, but I usually don't, that usually doesn't sway me that much, but you got to just hope that he's not one that just doesn't know how to get his nose to the wire and always the bridesmaid, never the bride kind of thing. I'm with you on the 9. My one thought against where maybe there's a step up is ran the first 4, took a little bit of a break for a couple of months, came back, at least from a buyer standpoint. One thing you look at, they paired up buyer lifetime tops. So sometimes there's a forward move after that. And if there is a forward move there, then maybe this horse can sort of jump up a level against this field. But I'm with you.
I think they have that for both. I think the 5 and the 9 both kind of did the same thing, where they just ran like a back-to-back career best.
Yeah,
so
actually,
both kind of are primed for it.
It was close. Yeah, it was sort of, this one had sort of run the races before, so it was pretty close and run those races before. So I didn't know if there'd be a move forward, or this is just what the horse is now. And so at his best, from a buyer standpoint, this is where he's going to be. So that's my concern, is if the 9 does have a move forward, then we'll see. You have the 3-horse in third, Spirit Maker. This was one I definitely considered as well. Is this one that you have as sort of a win contender, or just like, hey, I need to close out the try or close out the top 3?
No, I just like this horse, honestly, more so as an underneath. I think certainly could get up for second or third. I wanted to say one other thing about the 5 that I liked. And I'm sorry, I'm just going on and on about this horse, but I like the fact that the horse has been working ridiculous bullets. I mean, I'm not saying bullets as in like compared to every other horse, it's absurd. But for a horse that's primarily a closer and doesn't really like to show any early speed to, have 3 straight minute flats and a 48, I do like that it maybe shows that this horse might be able to show a little more early speed and not be as far back. But yeah, going back to the 3, honestly, again, I don't think this horse has the kick of the 9 and the 5, but I do think this horse has a little more early speed to actually be up there. So I do like the value and the price at Spirit Maker. And I think, again, a lot of these other horses that are going to want to go, I think this race is just way too long to trust any of those horses at the front to be able to hold on. So I think Spirit Maker will probably get the first jump of the real contenders. Trained by Saffie Joseph Jr., ridden by Florent Drew, have to respect like those kind of connections. And again, you want to talk about a closer who's working ridiculously fast. How about a minute? And then how about 35 and 3? And then 48 and 3. So, I mean, a horse that's certainly showing some bullets now. I also like seeing that the horse has been ridden by IRAD in the past. To me, just shows obviously that he also has seen something in this horse at some point. Again, I like the value at 6-1. I certainly think Spirit Maker will be in and around there. I think maybe the angle you could take for this horse as a winner is the idea that this horse will get the jump for sure on the 5 and 9 in terms of getting the first look. I just don't know if this horse has enough of a strong kick to be able to hold them off. I mean, I guess the only concern I have is even with that 93, you see the horse was 8th, but it was only 3 lengths back and then lost by 3/4, so like closes, but doesn't necessarily, and can sit closer, but doesn't have that same strong kick. So my worry is maybe Spirit Maker gets that first jump and you're like, oh my God, I got a price winner. And then all of a sudden you see the 9 and the 5 with the stronger kicks go by and you're like, well, damn, I thought I had
That's what we're hoping for, right? We're hoping for we're hoping for the 5 and potentially the 9 to roll by. But yeah, I think at a price play, I don't think any of these horses are too far away from each other. So you can go for value if you're on the fence about which one you like and you have a few that are sort of on the same level in your mind, then I think you always take the shot and go with the price. So I think we're good here. I didn't have any other ones. I have the 11 in third, but it's not anything I really need to jump into. So I think we're good here. The one I wanted to mention, and we don't have to go into the race because you guys talked about it on Thursday, and it was in the comments. Some people had mentioned Glengarry. So that's who you were. I didn't see the show yet from Thursday. Was that who you landed on as well? Because that was one of my power picks plays of the day, actually.
Yeah, so unfortunately, my best bets got completely ruined that I gave out on the show because one of my best bets was an exacta of Royal Slipper over Glengarry and Royal Slipper scratched. And then my other best bet was More Than Looks over I can't think of the name of the other horse right now. Talk of the Nation, I think, and one other horse. So I was playing those 2 horses, but they have both scratched out. But yeah, I love Glengarry in the spot. Kind of exactly about what Made in Focus was talking about. For me, I thought Royal Slipper was the horse to beat. My dear friend Wesley Ward's horse, who I thought would take a nice step forward second time out. But yeah, Glengarry, I mean, absolutely shoots out of a cannon if you watch the replay and was comfortably able to pull away without even being asked, showed a strong leg kick. So yeah, from a value perspective as well, now that Royal Slipper's out, for me, I think Glengarry would be my top pick in that race for sure.
I mean, he was actually my top, and I liked everything. He had like a Tyler's Tribe. I mentioned in the notes in my sort of my comments, he had sort of a Tyler's Tribe feel. Tyler's Tribe. Ultimately, it went poorly from a health standpoint, but just was one of those horses where you go, okay, this horse is coming from Perry Meadows. Is this step up going to be too much to handle? And that was the thought here. But the dad of Glengarry, Maximus Mischief, was just one who I thought had a lot of talent, did something similar, went, I think, from Parks to the Remsen, rolled in the Remsen, and then again, there was issues that sort of derailed his career as well. But I was looking at it going, if we can get a little bit of a price on Glengarry, and maybe that price goes down now, though, with the scratch, I was with you. And we see, obviously, Made in Focus, who we like being in sync with when it comes to the younger horses, of course. So I like that horse. That's one on my picks. I'm glad you and I are in agreement there. So that's it for this. That's it for Keeneland. You want to give I'll give you a last word on the closing day of Keeneland and sort of the lead into the Breeders' Cup. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm very excited to get to California for that. I'm certainly going to document some stuff to be able to send back. Hopefully we can get some good pics of the crew. Yeah,
Yes.
certainly, I will encourage everyone, since it is the last day of Keeneland, I highly recommend watching back the betting and boozing thing. Obviously, factor in, unfortunately, I think some of the picks I gave, I think it was only one or two of them, though, are slightly affected by the scratches, but one of them is where I've already corrected live on air that I would now go with Glenn Gary. And as you touched on, it's good to be aligned with Made in Focus. And then in terms of what's upcoming for Bet and Booze, and again, I don't know if it's 100% set in stone, but when I last talked to our boss man, which is Kyle Roscoe, that everyone knows, as of now, it looks like Bet and Booze is going to be on Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern, and then on Tuesday, we're going to have two shows at 6:30 p.m. Eastern and 9 p.m. Eastern. Again, I don't know if that's locked in for sure. I just know that's what we have written down for now, but there will for sure be one show Monday night and two shows at some point Tuesday night from the Bet and Booze and crew.
And again, the one thing we don't know about any of our show, about some of the other shows this week, is some may be taped. So even though they're scheduled for that time, and again, I don't know the full schedule yet for the betting and boozing side, but some of them may be taped. So again, if you're a viewer, listener, just check our YouTube page, check our website. There's always places to see which ones pop. But again, go to YouTube, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. So at least then you'll be notified when a new one comes up. Because again, we do have taped episodes, especially on a week like this, where we can't do all of them live. We're going to do some tape, so they'll just pop up in your feed and you'll be notified when that happens. So for myself, Pete Visco, for my co-host today from Betting and Booze, and Charlie Freeman, I want to thank you all. We had a bunch of listeners today. Thank you for joining us for closing day of Keeneland. And it's Breeders' Cup week, and we have a horse that's going to win a Breeders' Cup race on Friday that we have ownership of. So it doesn't get much better than this. So like I think the Uncle Howard likes to say, everyone watching, crush your bets. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.